Hi everyone. In today's tutorial I want to go over creating a coaster using the laser cutter, and we're going to use LightBurn to do that. So I wanted to refer you all to our little manual that's sitting usually in the print room near the Omtech laser cutters. In this manual you'll find the physical copy of these three different handouts. Now this is the initial setup that you need to go through if this is your first time using these laser cutters and first time logging into each computer station that's located near each laser cutter. And you just have to go through this once. As soon as you get that set up, you're all good for the rest of your life or until something changes. So get all this done. It's only 14 steps. Okay, and then the next part goes over adjusting your settings, which we're going to do as well. And I actually have a little modification for this one here, but this is talking about your display units and what kind of file settings to have on. And then in the last handout, I go over each component within the print room just to get us all up to speed on how our laser cutters work here at Orange Coast College in the architecture department. And so we'll go over all of those things here today. So let's start with the first one. Magnify this a little higher. So with an initial setup, you're going to want to log into one of the computer stations near one of the laser cutters. There are two laser cutters that are currently set up in the print room, and there's a computer hooked up to each one via a USB cable. So you're going to want to log in with your student credentials. You're going to want to start LightBurn. LightBurn is this app down here. Looks like this. It's got a little dragon for a logo. And you're going to want to click on Find My Laser. You should get this dialog box right away. The school computers are running 1.603. I'm currently running something a little bit more recent, but this version of LightBurn should work fine. But you're going to click Find My Laser, and then you're going to make sure that there's a USB data cable connected to that computer station. Right, so that way there's a way for the computer to communicate directly with that laser cutter. It does not do so over the network. Make sure that that's connected. Click on Next. Okay, you're going to want to choose between these two options, and the option you want to do is via the connection of serial USB. So universal serial bus. Click and highlight on that one, and then go ahead and click Add Device. Just for logistics, I would consider, let's see, the laser cutter here on the left side. If I'm facing both of them, one on the left side, I would call that Omtech 1. The one on the right, maybe we'll call it Omtech 2. It doesn't really matter what you name it. We're each going to have to name it, so these are going to be really unique to ourselves, but for the purposes of these tutorials, I'm going to name mine as 1 and 2 from left to right. So go ahead and name it, then click on Next. Our origin is always going to be on the rear right. Click on Next, and then you're done. Just click on Finish, click on OK, and you're ready to use LightBurn. The next thing I want to go over is some of the basic settings that you want to maybe think about having or think about changing while you're in LightBurn, so that way it looks sort of similar to my settings. This is, you're going to want to go to the Edit drop-down menu, go to Settings, and then you'll get this dialog box. Click on Display and Units, and you want to go ahead and turn the things that I have here on, if they're on, and off if they're not on. So beginner mode should be okay for you unless you're starting to get into a little bit more advanced territory. Then we might turn that off and get a more advanced interface. I would change units and grids to, instead of millimeters and seconds, I would go ahead and choose inches, millimeters per second. So inches being your display units, and millimeters per second being your speeds when talking about how fast the laser should be moving. So that's the only thing I would change here in this dialog box. So I'll probably try to make an amendment on that so that way it reflects that. Otherwise, let's see if I could do it here. Let's just, can I create a shape? All right, I think I'll just have to do that later. You can adjust your vertical grid spacing over here on the right side. You can make sure to snap to objects and snap to this grid. You can have your arrow keys actually move you in very specific increments. So if you set it up as inches, you can actually have your grid spacing set in inches. So maybe every 1 inch or every 2 inches is a major grid line, and then when you nudge things over with your arrow keys, maybe that's a 1/4 inch move at a time. You can adjust all those settings there. So that's for displaying units. And then for file settings, DXF import settings, I'm going to put mine on inches just because I normally am 3D modeling in Rhino in inches. So when I import my DXF, I also want it to see that it is in inches. Unless you're using millimeters, I would recommend you use inches. I also typically just want my imported things to be grouped when they come in, just so I don't try to move them at some point and forget a little piece of it. And then you can go ahead and click OK, and that's just some of the settings you might want to think about changing. And then let's go over the setup here and starting an engraving job, which actually this is probably what this file should be named. All right, so here is our setup. We have the master blower switch, which this is pointing to, master blower switch behind PC. So behind this computer is an on and off switch, and what it does is it initiates and turns off the exhaust that we have. So where these two flex ducts go into the cabinet, there's a whole exhaust system that exhausts out into the ceiling soffit. So there's just a little on and off switch behind that PC. It's not really in this photo. It's hard to get all of these things in one photo, but that is something that you want to know. So when you're burning something, when you're laser cutting, when you're engraving any material, anything at all, you want to have that system on, so that way all of that really smelly, all the fumes are really just going somewhere and not into your lungs. Less of it is going to go into your lungs. Okay, so master blower switch, that's number one. PC station number one is this guy right here. If this is Omtech number one, this is PC station number one. And here, of course, is the Omtech M52028060 or 60 watt. Number four, manual blast gate for Omtech number one. So this Omtech number one has a silver flex duct that hooks up to the exhaust system here. Number four is actually pointing at a manual blast gate. With that blast gate, you can pull it to open up that valve, so that way all of this exhaust has the ability to go through that gate. If you have it pushed in and closed, then the fumes will not be extracted by our exhaust system. So pull it open if you're using this one here. Pull the other manual blast gate if you're using this laser cutter over here. Let's see, that's number five. Number five is this actual flex duct. So this Omtech number one has this silver flex duct. This Omtech number two has this dark black flex duct. Okay. This is number 8 down here sitting on the ground is an industrial water chiller. So it helps to cool the laser as it's running its job. This has to be on when you're laser cutting. In fact, you probably won't be able to laser cut without it on anyway. So, and then we of course have Omtech number 2 and PC station number 2. We also have compressed air, but don't worry about that for this laser cutter. We used to run compressed air through our epilogues, but we really don't need to worry about that. So don't worry about turning that valve or any of these little valves here as well. Okay. Next thing is, so what's the sequence of commands? So first thing you're going to want to do when you're coming to laser cut is you're usually coming with your file ready to go. So you immediately as you approach the computer, you're going to turn the master blower switch on. There's that switch all the way in the back. It's labeled master blower switch. Then you're going to turn on the industrial chiller. Right, there's the one switch there, and then you're going to turn the control switch and the laser switch on for the specific laser that you're going to be using, either number 1 or number 2. Here's that valve I was talking about, so you're going to want to open the valve for the machine you're about to use. This is that little gate. As you can see here in the picture, I've pulled it open, allowing fumes to run through this flex duct and into our exhaust system. Whereas if we compare it to this gate, it's closed. This gate is closed, this gate is open. Now, you're always going to have some sort of stock material, chipboard, wood, cardboard, acrylic, paper, museum board, several different things. There's also a list of materials that you cannot laser cut, including vinyl, PVC, foam core, lots of plastics. Should not be cut on the laser cutter because of the toxic fumes. It's just bad for not only the environment but for your own lungs. And so with an approved material, you're going to want to lay down on the bed of the laser on the hex grid. But the laser is going to need to be exactly 19 millimeters away from the material. So how do we measure that? If you look in the cabinet, if I scroll back up to that picture of all the things, in this cabinet up here, near number 6, there's going to be a bunch of these little, what I call material gauges. I laser cut these a semester ago, and they're meant to show you exactly 19 millimeters. So from the bottom of this material, or the bottom of this little material gauge, to the top of it, that's exactly 19 millimeters. So put your material in. Make sure the bed of the laser is raised or actually lowered low enough so that way you can fit this little material gauge there, and it should just be a tight fit. It doesn't have to be super tight, but that's you're trying to get it so that way the bottom of the laser is 19 millimeters away from the top of the material. This is the adjustment knob all the way on the far right. So if you adjust it in one direction, it'll drop. The whole bed will drop. If you adjust it in the other direction, the bed will rise. So you're going to want to play with that so that way you get that laser 19 millimeters away from your material. And once you're done with that, you can go ahead and get to LightBurn and start setting up the job. So I also included this quick cut settings. These are just some recommended settings from Omtech's manual for this specific laser cutter. Our laser here has a 60 watts of power. So with that amount of wattage, here are the recommended settings for wood, for acrylic, for leather, for different thicknesses. Okay, so for speed, you're going to want to go with 16 mil per second, and for power, you're going to want to go about 20% power. If you're trying to cut through, that's for cutting. There are different engraving settings. I also recommend that you use a material test card. I have one designed for our Omtechs, located right here, and material test card. And let's look at this one right here for 1/8 inch Baltic birch. We'll look at what that looks like. Here it is. And here's that material test card. So you'll see several of these laying about in our studio, and what it's meant to do is show you a matrix of choices that you could make for different cut settings, and this is a matrix of different options for engraving settings, and then this is just a small scale bar or spectrum of different settings for an image, going from a pure white value to a pure black value. With this gradient, you can see what it looks like with this specific setting, which is 300 speed, 30 power, 0 power minimum, with a 0.0847 mil line interval at 300 dpi. So once you run this test, you'll get a good idea of different settings for that very specific material. This one's kind of catered towards wood. So these settings here on the left, the speed settings, are kind of average cut settings for wood of different thicknesses. So that way, any one of these should really actually cut through the wood no matter what thickness it is. We really don't want to experiment with anything thicker than 1/4 of an inch with any of these materials. Once we start doing that, you're going to need really slow, powerful settings that possibly could burn the material. You could definitely start a fire. There's definitely a potential for you to start a fire. So we will not be using anything thicker than 1/4 of an inch in this studio. So let's go back and go File New. I've already got my coasters perfectly designed here in Rhino. This is my laser cut version. Here's my 3D printed version. And then this one's the CNC version, just slightly different than the other two things. So I'm going to take this one, I'm going to export it. I want to export it. Let's go to this class. Let's go to coaster. Let's go to laser cutter. And I want to export it in Rhino to a AutoCAD drawing exchange file, or DXF. I'm going to name it 250623 coaster, and I'm going to put 01, just in case I end up changing the design or realizing that some of my settings don't work or something I need to change in the design. I can come back to Rhino, re-export or make the change in the design, re-export it, and then I'll call it coaster 02. That's just my way of keeping it somewhat organized, and then the date is just always included in my file name. So DXF. So we're going from 3DM to DXF, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit OK in this dialog box, and then I'm going to minimize this. I'm here in LightBurn, and the first thing I want to do is I've closed all the windows that are normally here, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to bring that all back. Here I am in the window drop-down menu. Some of the tools that I want to make sure to see include cuts and layers, because that's going to show me my different layers. Let's go back and turn on move, because that's going to allow me to move the machine using LightBurn. Let's also put shape properties. Let's also put on I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's about it. Okay, so with these things here, this is where my layers go. Now I'm sort of ready to go. Let's make sure I've changed my settings. So here I am, display. Obviously mine looks a little bit different. That could be because I am not in beginner mode. So if I change this to beginner mode, hit OK, edit, settings, still looks the same. No matter. So let's go to units and grid. I'm already using inches and millimeters per second. I'm already snapping to things. My visual grid spacing is 1/4 of an inch. Grid contrast it's low versus high. I don't really want to see that grid all that much. I want to see my design more, but I still want it there for reference. Let's go to display. This is all looking good. Import, export, auto detect units if possible. Inches is my default for importing those, grouping. All right, so I've got everything set the way I like it. Next thing I want to do is file, import, and find my coaster, OCC, coaster, and laser cutter, and here it is right here. And here it is, right? Nice and simple. I'm going to move it all the way to my rear right of the laser cutter bed, which is my origin in this case. So this is my origin with a positive X going to the left and a positive Y going to downwards. I'm going to use the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom in and zoom out. And what you'll see here is something I had set up in Rhino. In Rhino I had used different layers. So here's my laser cut layer. Within that layer I have sub layers: engrave, which is green, and cut, which is blue. Okay, and the reason why I did that is because I need these things to have different settings than that blue one right there. So first thing you'll notice is that everything is grouped. And that was part of my settings. I'm going to now ungroup it since I've successfully moved it over here to the corner. And then I'm going to make a huge selection. And if you go from right to left and make a big rectangular window selection this way, what you'll end up selecting is everything that's fully encompassed by this window, but also things that are touching it, like this green circle. So TJC is fully encompassed, this green circle is touching that window, and therefore all those things will select. Now if I go the opposite way from left to right and I make a very similar shape where TJC is fully encompassed, but this green circle is not is touching my rectangle, it's only going to select these things in here. Okay, so let's do that again. This way, and I select TJC and the circle versus this way, where it's only going to select TJC. Okay, so very helpful tool for you to be able to do something like this where you can highlight all the TJC part but not ever touch the circles and select those. But I'm going to go ahead and go this way because I want to select all this green stuff. Here my cuts layers, I have two layers, 01 and 03. This is all done by the colors. So if I want TJC to, I have a couple choices for what mode I use. I can use line mode, I can use fill mode, and I can use offset fill. So what I'm going to actually do is, I probably should have used a third color. So I'm going to take this green circle and I'm going to change the color to, let's change it to pink or magenta. Okay, so I'm going to take TJC, and when I select all those things, here in the cuts layer window, that row is highlighted. So for this layer, I'm going to change the mode to fill. I want the laser to come in and engrave those things and fill that in and basically color it in with the laser. So I'm going to set it to fill. I can also double click this layer and now look at the options. So these are all my different options. And I'm going to take a look at some of the material test cards that I've printed over the last couple of months. And if I'm making this coaster out of wood, I'm going to take a look at the wood material test card. So I'm going to put away all the acrylic ones, and now I'm going to look at this wood one. So if looking at this wood one, I have cut settings and I have engraving settings. So looking at the engraving settings, right, I can find whatever one fits my style the best, right? This is my coaster, I'm designing it for myself. Do I want it to be really dark? Do I want it to be lighter? There's some slight ghosting that's occurring on all the lighter ones. If you look really closely, I'll make sure to include a photo of this somewhere. What happens with the laser cutter, if you engrave too quickly and you don't turn off bidirectional fill, it's going to go so quickly that it's going to move the machine a bunch, and it's going to produce sort of a ghosted double square image. Whereas if you go nice and slow, it'll be more controlled and in the right spot. So for this one, I'm going to go with one of these, maybe somewhere on the 200 row. And then the next thing that I want to evaluate from this material test card is which one looks cleanest, like which one is burnt less or the least, or which one might be easier for cleaning up. Those are all factors because I don't want to do too much work after it's done. If I had to make 1,000 of these and I have to sand it heavily, my hand's going to get really tired. I'm super lazy, so I want to get the setting correct right away. So I'll probably use, actually, something in the 300s looks good, although it's kind of ghosting a little bit. I'm going to say 200 speed and 10 power. 200 speed and 10 power. So I've already said fill, right? Fill is when it engraves it. I'm going to change the speed to 200, and I'm going to do 10 maximum power, and then the minimum power is going to adjust automatically. Since it was at 20, the minimum power can't be lower than the maximum power, or can't be higher than the maximum power, so it's already changed. So I'm going to leave it at 10. And then my line interval, the finer I make the line interval, the smaller I make that number, the more times it's gonna, the more rows of engraving it's going to do, because it just does it one line at a time, just from left to right, and then working from the bottom all the way to the top. So I can have it do very fine lines, which is going to take longer but maybe look better, or it's going to do kind of fat lines that's going to be faster and maybe look uglier. So I'm just going to keep it at the default setting here. Okay. You know what? I'm not seeing bidirectional fill, so I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go back to my settings, edit, settings. I need to turn off beginner mode, because when I go to affect this setting, I want to be able to turn on and off bidirectional fill. So here's a little diagram of how bidirectional fill works. And what it's doing is it's actually going, the laser is moving left to right the whole entire time as it moves from the bottom towards the top of the project. And in doing that, each time it goes left and right, it actually is engraving. Now when I turn this off, it's not a bidirectional fill, it's actually just filling in one direction, which produces less ghosting, right? Because I told you earlier that bidirectional fill, going left to right super fast, is actually affecting the engraving, because it's sort of shaking the machine the whole entire time, and therefore shaking the job and not really producing the best product. But if we turn off bidirectional fill, it's just going to go from left to right, and it's going to go back to the left, and then go left to right, and go back to the left. And when it goes left to right, it's actually engraving. When it goes back to the left position, it is not engraving during that time. But because of the nature of turning off bidirectional fill, it's also going to take twice as long, because it's only moving and engraving in one direction. So make sure to turn that off, and we'll hit OK. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to affect this magenta one here. So looking at my material test card, I'm going to go for a setting that did not cut through, right? If I allow the magenta one to have settings that would allow it to cut through, it's not only going to cut that one, it's also going to cut the blue one. And what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with a coaster that's smaller than what I originally wanted. So I don't want that, right? This blue line represents the final output size, which is a 4-inch diameter coaster. Now if I use the same settings for both of these two things, it'll cut this one as well, and I'll have a small coaster. So I don't want that. Looking at my material test card, looks like at the very top, on the top left, I have some settings that did not penetrate. But if I look at the back, they nearly penetrated. So I actually want to do something that's less powerful and faster. So looking at this very first one over here in this matrix, I'm going at the fastest speed, which is 30, with a power of 10%. So why don't we kick up that speed to something twice as fast, like 60, and then the power, instead of 10, let's go with 5. I think I can do 5. Maximum power 5, minimum power 5. Minimum power just has to do with what do you want the lowest power setting to be when the laser has to slow down for corners. So it's sort of like your own car. All four wheels are not necessarily moving at the same exact speed when going around a corner or making a turn. The inside wheels are usually going slower, while your outside wheels are having to do more work because they have a further distance to travel. So I'm going to do 60 and 5 and 5. So the idea is I'm going to go twice as fast as this very first setting, so I hopefully don't cut through, and also use half the power that this setting has. Okay, I can also dictate how many passes. So if I wanted to, I could say, well, let's do 2 passes, 3 passes, 4. In this case, I don't want to cut through, and if I do 2 passes, it might actually cut through. So I'm going to keep it at 1 and click OK. And then the last one is the blue one, okay? And that's this layer right here. I'm going to double click that one, okay? And that's my cut one. So what I want to do is I want to look at my matrix and figure out what are the best settings. Where was there less burn marks on it? What has the least amount of cleanup? Also, if possible, you want to choose something that goes relatively fast, right? Let's say I had to make 1,000 coasters. If I set it to 5 versus setting it to 10, I'd either be doing half the amount, I'd be doing it half as slow or twice as fast. So I'm going to choose, looks like 12 speed, and let's do 20 power. 12 speed, 20 power, line mode, right? Because I'm not filling in this whole circle. If I filled in the blue stuff, I'd be coloring in the whole entire coaster, and I don't want to do that. And then number of passes I'm going to set to 1. I think I did all of these with just 1 pass. So now I'm going to click OK. The next thing I want you to think about is the sequence in which it's going to cut these things. And these layers dictate that sequence. So whatever's at the top is going to go first, and whatever's at the bottom will go last. Now, you don't want to laser cut the thing that should be cut at the end, right? This final blue circle, it should be the last thing we do, because we want to engrave this first while the material is set perfectly 19 millimeters away from the laser, and then we want to just score this line, and then we want to cut it out. And when you cut it out, because of the hex bed, because of the material, once you do that final cut, the coaster will actually drop down below even the bottom of the original material. So if we were to cut this out first, have it drop, then you wouldn't have that 19 millimeter height requirement between the engraving that needs to occur and the top of the surface. That won't be 19 millimeters anymore because it's dropped. So what we're going to do is I want the green to go first. So I'm going to select green, click up arrow. Now it's the first thing that's going to happen. Pink thing, I want that next, so I'm going to move that, up arrow. And then blue thing is already at the bottom now, but if it wasn't, I can use the down arrow. I can trash one of these layers. I can copy some of these settings. So now I am ready to go. I've got my material sitting in the laser. I've got everything turned on as per the handout. I've got the master blower switch. I've got the chiller. I've got the 2 switches on the laser. I've got that gate valve opened. I've got my material sitting on the bed, and it's exactly 19 millimeters away from the laser. I've adjusted the bed to do that. The next thing you want to do is you're going to want to go ahead and run this. So to run it, you can go ahead and, where are we? You're going to want to think about a couple of things. I'm going to turn on window. I think I want laser. Laser, yes, I need laser on. So here's one thing I want you to think about. Where do you want to start from? We all know that our job origin is on the top right, as shown here. In fact, I'm wondering why this is on the left here. Let's go to, there we go. Okay, perfect. So I like to use absolute coordinates because it means that when the laser goes back to its home, the origin, I can laser cut this thing here. It'll go back to its origin. And let's say I want to flip this coaster and put a nice fun pattern on the back side. If I have this set to absolute coordinates, I can put the new design right here. I can delete TJC, put something super cool here in its place. And because I've used absolute coordinates, the laser knows it needs to move from this origin to this center, from this origin to this center, and back and forth. And I can do multiple cuts that way. Now, if I wanted to use current position or user origin, that means that I can set my origin anywhere I want. It could be relative to, let's say I put some material here in the laser cutter all the way in the center. I can move the origin to that center or the top right part of the material. So top right part, right? Or I could also use current position, which means I'm jogging the machine. These arrows allow me to move the laser head left, right, up, down, and then I can say, let's start from here. Let's make this the current origin on the top right, or I could say right in the center, and let's move from there. But I would recommend absolute coordinates for a couple different reasons. So. All right, so now I have all the windows that I need. The next thing you want to do is you want to use this little button here called frame. Once you click frame, what the laser is going to do is it's actually going to take all this information, all this geometry here in your LightBurn file, and it's going to use the laser head to move around with the laser pointer on, not the actual laser, but a laser pointer, to show you just whereabouts this job is going to take place relative to the bed, relative to your material that you placed on it. So let's say you have like a piece of material that's exactly the size of the coaster. It's going to be really important for you to nail exactly where the coaster gets output, because if the design ends up being too low, it'll get cut off and you won't have enough material. So that's really important. Framing it, always frame before you actually run the job. Once you've done that, you've checked that you have enough material, that your design is going to get cut in the right spot, you can go ahead and hit start. And you always have to watch your projects. I mean, you don't have to look at it that whole entire time. In fact, I highly recommend you not look at the pretty laser, but you need to be somewhere nearby your job. You cannot just start this job and walk away. You could totally burn down that machine, cause a fire, and you definitely need to be nearby it just in case something happens. It's happened to me. No matter how confident you are with this thing, I would not walk away from the laser cutter while it's running. And if you do, and I see it, I'm just going to turn it right off. So you hit start, let it do its thing. It's going to engrave this, it's going to score this, and then it's going to cut this finally. And then you'll be done with this assignment. And again, this is just to do a basic coaster that will show you some techniques on how to use the laser cutter itself. It's not really about the coaster design, it's much more about being able to use the machine. And for the second iteration, you're more than welcome to come in and do a much cooler design in Rhino, bring it up in LightBurn, cut it with some wood, and do something much cooler design-wise. So that's the tutorial for the laser cutter. Good luck, don't burn anything down, and I'll see you all very soon.